Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ion Radio, and this is the Backseat Admiral. If you're in the chat, let me know if the sound sounds good. I have completely moved my streaming type computer setup from the bedroom that it was in to my basement now, so I'm hoping that it's all working out fine. So I'm just gonna keep talking while chat can catch up to where I am in real life. See, we already have a couple people in chat, so welcome Northern Hero and Kroga Magnum and MZ 1705. Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad the sound sounds good. Looks like you guys are good morning and good afternoon people, so that means you guys are from around the planet. For me, it's a little bit confusing because technically it's morning here, but I've worked all night, so it's kind of like an evening for me. So you can take that for what it is. I'm trying to figure out the lighting here. I haven't really had time to do, so hopefully I do that next time. I thought I was going to have more time today, but last night it ice rained, and it's like 25 degrees here, and I had like an inch of ice on my car, so from the time I leave my work, I have just enough time to like shower, change, eat, get everything set up and ready, and then go. And then it took me like 20 minutes to chip the ice off my car, which was pretty horrendous. So it put me way behind schedule. So I'm just glad that I was able to get everything up and running for this. So today we're going to be talking about the first episode of season 6. And for those of you that don't know, back in season 3 and 4, what Ken and I decided to do is we were going to divide up the commanders among ourselves. So over the course of the 2 seasons, we would each play half the commanders. So if you add up all the commanders in the list, it works out perfectly that each of us can take 18, which fills 9 episodes. Then we can do whatever we want for our 10th finale episode. So that was seasons 3 and 4. We both played half of the commanders. Then we did season 5, which we didn't make any of the lists. We only used Patreon, Discord, YouTube, commenters, and things like that, their lists. And then we decided to go back from that and jump into season 6 and 7 by flipping who had which commander. So we're kind of excited for that because then at the end of like season 6, 7, Ken and I have both played every single commander on the channel. And you can then see like both of our perspectives on certain commanders, and like certain commanders you can build a lot of different things with. But sometimes there's commanders that you don't see very often, and it's kind of nice then if you ever really wanted to just be like, hey, I need some ideas to build with an obscure commander, you could just type in Ion Radio and a commander, and all of our matches with those commanders will come up, and you can look through them. So equip your car with a Hoth Ice Officer. Seriously, though. And what was even more annoying about it is it was only like from one direction. So my windshield was completely iced. And then my driver's side, like the 2 most important sides, my passenger side had almost nothing on it and my rear had nothing on it. So if I had just parked, like backed into the spot instead of parked where I was, I would be a lot more fine. But it was not the case. So let's see. Anything else about season 6? Season 6 is going to be, we're going to have a couple episodes release, and then we're going to be jumping into our Madness series. So I'm excited about that. And with the beginning of the new year, Ken and I have switched from an every week Armada release, to an every other week Armada release. Mainly because it's been with me having a kid that's almost a year old now. Crazy how fast that's gone. It's just become really, really difficult to find time to record enough games and then edit them, because each video takes like, if we combine how much time Ken and I both work on them, probably 10 to 12 hours. So some of our shorter games, I can get the editing done in like 6-ish, but it's really hard to find 6 hours when you're busy. So, hello there, NimraPL. Welcome to the stream. So we're going to get started. I realized that I haven't really talked about a fleet that I have made because we did season 5 and talked about fleets other people made in quite a while. So this will be an interesting take on it because a lot of times the way Ken and I have filmed, we're like almost 6 months in advance sometimes. So we have ideas that you're seeing now that we've been thinking about since like August and things like that. So like we played seasons 3 and 4, then we did seasons 5, and we had all these ideas built in. And then when we sat down to design seasons 6 and 7, we have like almost a whole year of ideas and, backseats that we've both talked about and come up with ideas through in games that we've played that you'll see like a new take on how fleets are built and things like that. So like this is like catching up to where we are in time, in essence. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here we go. Let me adjust this just a little bit. There we go. That's better. Okay, so in season 6, episode 1 is Garm versus Tag. And one of the reasons I put these two together is because they both have effects that go on their card that trigger on certain turns. And I think both of these are like trash commanders. So pretty much whatever we both came up with would be a decently even fight because neither of them are really powerful. This game I actually got Tag to go off like once or twice, and that's more times than I normally do. And I see that I have to transfer files. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. I realized that I didn't transfer all the files that I needed over to this computer. This isn't the computer I use for editing. My other one is. So it's always a big like copy paste back and forth between all of my documents and things like that to get things to function properly. And I realized I had none of the slides for fleet deployments and things like that. There we go. Now it's copying over. Okay, let's get back to talking about it. So both these fleets are bad. I specifically set out to try practicing flying more like small ships Architens because I'm terrible with Architens. And Ken, I think for these 2 seasons specifically set out to try to fly more fighters. So if you actually look at all of our lists when we finally release them, Ken actually has more lists with fighters than me, which is kind of crazy. So here's my list. It's a tag list. So with the tag list, I'll get to them in a second. So Admiral Tag, after deploying fleets, place 2 non-consecutive round tokens on this card at the start of that ship phase during each round. Matching one of those tokens, each friendly ship may recover one of its discarded defense tokens. So this is pretty trash, mainly because combat normally takes place skirmishing round 2, lots of combat round 3 and 4, and then 5 you're flying away from each other. So you obviously want to choose like round 4 or 3, so then you can get them back on 5 because you can't put them next to each other. And this is one of the things that we pose to everyone in the our question, like, how would you change tag? Like, is it fine with non-consecutive, or would it be okay with it being on each other? Like, you could just put any 2. I honestly think if you choose any 2, it would be fine. I mean, look at him. He costs 25 points, and Agate gets away with giving you a complete defense token and using ECM for 1 ship for 20 points, and he's like 25 points, and I think I've used him now like 4 times, and I've gotten maybe 2 defense tokens back. Like, it's just a feel-bad card. But I have him on an ISD2 because I like ISD2s. I've decided to change this ISD2 from what I normally do, which is like gunnery teams, to a salvo build. And then I put flat guns on it, and I kind of liked it. It was pretty cool. So I like on an ISD2 Commander Vanto because most things that you do with the ISD2 requires you to have multiple tokens / dials since the changes with 1.5. Like ECM requiring a token to regenerate. You need ECM, and you're probably only going to use it twice per game, but you're going to need at least 1 token to regenerate it. When you have gunnery teams, you're going to need to do Confire. And the best way to keep an ISD alive and on target is Navigate. And then you also probably want to do Engineering. And this fleet has no fighters, so I don't have to worry about that. But that's still like 3 commands I really, really want to do. And Commander Vanto allows you to give you options to do more than 1 thing in a turn, which greatly benefits the ISD2. Local fire teams allows me to switch out the contain for salvo, and the ISD2 salvo is pretty good. It's a red and 2 blues. And then with flat guns, you're throwing a red and 2 blues at long range, which hits pretty hard, especially like if you can like wait to use it. Like someone shoots at you long range, you do whatever you do defensive token wise, you salvo them, you get 3 dice on them, and then when they come into range, then you hit them with your whole volley. Like, that's pretty good. Couple that with XI7s. So most people are willing to use like their redirects on salvos because it's like usually a small amount of damage and you just skirt it to the side. But with XI7s, it means whatever firing arc they're using against you is going to take the brunt of the damage. Point defense ion cannons. I have no squads, so this card is here to just keep my ship alive by re-rolling all the squadron dice, and then in close range I can re-roll doubles and things like that. So this ship's pretty decent, and I'm pretty happy with this version of the ISD. I still think that I like gunnery teams more than salvo builds, but that's just me. And also I'm like moving into the direction of I've gotten a lot more used to playing with ships that don't have defensive retrofits, so I'm not as reliant on ECM. And I swear, like, a lot of the times that Ken attacks me, he doesn't get accuracies, or people don't get accuracies, and then I don't get my use out of ECM, and I would use something else. And then having the other card that allows you to get salvo, the defensive one, I'm trying to remember what it is. Give me a second. Let me look it up. Defensive. It's the cheap one. Reactive gunnery. Reactive gunnery on here isn't a bad idea. It lowers the cost of it. And then, like, when you're using, like, the beginning of the game, like, you can use your contain to do it, or your redirects, especially when you've taken a beating. Like, so the early turns, you can use your contain to do it because you have shields. And then on the later turns, you're using a redirect because you have no shields and you need to use your contain to keep from getting crit. So I would consider doing that change. And then it's also, you can't really block then that salvo for the most part, because like you would need 4 accuracies, or I've already used all my defense tokens, and I don't know. I lean that direction, and then I could have gunnery teams because I really like gunnery teams in ISD too, especially because a lot of times you're seeing a lot of small ships now, and I like boom, boom, an ISD2 can take out 2 small ships a turn. Rest of the fleet. So rest of the fleet, this is one iteration that I decided to do with this Argoton, specifically tied with Tag. And I wanted to make it so that I would have ways to spend my defense tokens so I could get rid of them. I know that sounds crazy, but then possibly getting Tag back. And a lot of times you'll see TRCs on Anita controlled Architects, because then you can replace the contain with another evade, and then you can have like two options. You can use it evade defensively and then use it for offense with TRC. So in this way, I could just like, you shoot at me, or I shoot at you, I spend TRCs, you shoot at me, I discard it, I get the effect because I'm a small ship, probably you're a bigger ship, and I chuck 2 dice out. And then the next turn I can get it back with tag, and then I can just keep TRCing. That was kind of the idea. And then the same thing applies with Expert Shield Tech. I have 2 redirects, not a lot of shields, so that will help drastically reduce the amount of damage that I'm taking. So, cool. I have 2 of them. And for these, I wanted to try practicing flying them kind of together and getting shots on target. And for the most part, I think I did well. We'll get to that when we get to it. And then I have a Raider 2 class Corvette with Iden Versio, disposable capacitors, and heavy ion cannons. And I honestly think this was one of the best ships in this entire fleet. Iden Versio actually works well with tag because you're trying to get in close with her, and then you're just chucking your evades out to cancel dice. And like if you run into a fighter heavy list, like every attack is probably almost going to kill you with Raiders. That's one of the problem. And Iden's just like, cancel that one, and then cancel this one, and then cancel that one. And she can cancel 4 fighter attacks, and you take 0 damage. And then tag says, here, you can have your redirect, or sorry, your evade back. Thank you very much. And then it has heavy ion emplacements to shred shields for your other ships. So I like that ship. And then there's the Gazanti class cruiser with CommsNet. I think this fleet came in at 400 points, but if I were to redo it, I think I would get rid of CommsNet on this, and I would instead add in, or find a place to add in. It might be with that adding reactive gunnery and the gunnery teams. It would lower my cost enough that I would be able to get an extra point, because I don't remember what my bid is. Let me look it up real fast. My fleet came in at 399, so I could bump up to 400 and it'd be fine. But the idea here is that with switching it to, I think, parts resupply, I can throw all of my ships in engineering token. And for the most part, I use Navigate for my Architects. And with Expert Shield Techs, what I found in the game is that I wasn't using it to redirect. I was instead using it to cancel damage and then just taking the damage. And if I just had an engineering token on the ship, then I could take the shields from one side of the ship and transfer them to the other side. Because most of the time with Architects, you're only going to be hit like on the front side, and then as you run away, you rear, and there's usually one side that never gets damaged. So I could take that and move it to the other side. And then I could just focus with the evades and the redirect to just cancel damage and then just move the shields. And I think that then with the parts resupply, the Gazanti is more of just like an activation sink instead of a token passer. Because for the most part, like Vanto can handle himself and do just fine with token generation for the ISD. I didn't feel like I really needed to be passing it tokens. I mainly passed tokens to, oddly enough, the Raider, and it ended up, because I did that, I'll talk about it when I get there, I just missed out on killing the MC-80 of Ken's fleet. So I think the parts resupply actually would be better in this case. Okay. I'm going to take a quick pause. I'm going to look at chat and see what you guys are talking about. If you guys have any questions or thoughts or anything, you can hit up there, and then I'm going to talk about Ken's fleet. So, you're welcome. North Hero, he says, I know I appreciate the time you guys put in. And then James Blackburn's in the chat too. Good morning. Love the new background, John. Thanks. This is actually, the backdrop that we use when we're recording. We just stand in front of it. So I've just repositioned and now it's double use. I still try to work out 3 hours of free time during the week to play something around my little one. Luckily enough to catch some tournaments from time to time. Yeah, my little guy is starting to become very, very mobile. So it's a full-time job. Being a parent's a full-time job all the time, but like working night shift, my wife working, and flip-flopping back and forth schedules, and then taking care of him takes a lot of time. So like I only get like maybe 1 day a week to really focus in on editing, and that's really what it came down to. Like I usually edit over the course of 2 days, because dedicating 6 hours to getting an edit done is a long time. So with only being able to really get like 1 good day a week now, I'm like, there's just no way we gotta split it between 2 weeks, Ken. So that's what we're doing. And oddly enough, we've still released a video almost every single week, which is kind of funny. But that's kind of like the plan. Slow down the Armada a little bit because I can then focus on editing that. And then we can find time to do other games that we also enjoy to break things up and add things. So then I'm editing and then Ken's editing at the same time, and it works out. So it is very good. Let's see. Just use a third computer for file storage. Ken and I have actually talked about that. One of the problems is Ken works in IT, and so he works on like a super industrial scale, and we don't need an industrial scale. So sometimes he's like, yeah, I could get this together. I'm like, whoa, that is a lot. But we have talked about that because the software that we use to edit came out with like recently a way to like file share, and then theoretically like we both could be working at it on the same time. I don't know how that would do because we have a lot of files that we use for editing. So I don't know how well it would work because like the laptop that I use to edit on has 64 gigs of RAM. That's one of the reasons why I bought that laptop to do it, just because it can just pull up almost tons and tons of video, and it's really good at editing. So I don't know how linking it with the internet with another computer would actually function. Good morning, Scott. Welcome to the stream. Reactive gunnery. Yeah, I remembered it. It's one of those things that I haven't done backseat now in almost a month. So like, while you guys see me play Armada almost every week, I don't. So sometimes I forget what some of the cards are. I love any fleet with a space pickle and a space potato. I honestly think that's one of the reasons why Ken made that fleet, and we'll be talking about it in just a second. And radio arterial armada content for our community. Thanks, guys. You are very welcome. We love producing content for you guys. So I'm caught up. Again, if you guys have any questions or thoughts, drop them in the chat, and we're going to talk about Ken's fleet. So Ken has Garm. He is the other commander that you put tokens on him to gain an effect. What he allows you to do is you gain, on those matching turns, a number of command tokens equal to your command value onto your ship. So I know a lot of people get effect with him, but for me, I don't like him. If he was in a different faction, actually, like if he was in like Republic or CIS, I think he would get a lot more use. I just don't see him useful necessarily in the Rebel faction, because like the Rebels, for the most part, their ships are very specifically designed to do specific things, so that they don't need to multifunction. So like you have your fighter pusher, and then you have small ships, and your small ships can set a command every single turn, so you don't really need to plan ahead. You just do it. While like an assault frigate should be either like navving or engineering. You don't really need tokens, but they're okay, I guess. So he has an assault frigate, and I actually really like the way this assault frigate is set up. it is set up with engine text, so he can use Garm with that to trigger it. And then he has reactive gunnery, and this is like the exact same thing I was saying with the ISD because it has the same defense tokens. Like, while you have shields, you use your contain. And then when you have no shields, you use your redirects, and you can trigger it then. Works well. You have advanced projectors. This thing has like one of the most shields in the game. So you can just take the shields from one place and you throw them on the other side. And that actually really helped Ken keep his ship alive with my XI7s because of 1.5 changes with the interaction between advanced projectors and XI7s. So you can move, instead of just one, you can move one to each shield facing. So he could still redirect 3 with the spend of 1 token. And then he has quad battery turrets. And while this is a slow ship, quad battery turrets allows you to add an extra blue dice. So then you're basically a ISD2 out both your sides. And then with engine tech, you can stay slow and still move speed 2. And if you really need to get out of there, you can go speed 2 and then move speed 3 with engine techs. And then quad batteries is more likely to trigger because you can stay at lower speeds and still maneuver. I like it. The ship's pretty good. I would like to see other things on it. Like, I honestly think if he could have found the points, adding an ion upgrade, it was really important. PDIC, because it's just that good. It's hard for me to see flying one of these ships without it. Then he has a Nebula B support refit, and he has it. This is one of the most Ken versions of the ship I've seen in a while, and I mean that lovingly. It has projection experts, which is an interesting card on here. You don't see it very much, but it allows it to stay out of combat and kind of give it a role that's not necessarily just like a shooting gunship, and pass its rear shields to the MC-80 to help keep it alive, which it did save the MC-80, to be honest. Otherwise, I would have killed it. It has dual turbo laser turrets because it's cheap and allows that one shot out the front to be kind of like a reroll. It has Vanguard, which gives it an additional weapons team, and then he took gunnery teams with it. So this thing is actually quite a lot of points. And with gunnery teams, then I wouldn't want dual turbo laser towers. I would switch it for link turbo laser towers or another turbo laser card, because you want to be able to do a reroll on both attacks. That's kind of my take on it. Especially like when you're using gunnery teams, you're going to be con firing obviously to make it work, but you can kind of make that work with Garm. And yeah, so it did its thing. I would just switch out dual turbo laser towers. This kind of only works with Garm though, now that I'm thinking about it, like, because you take like an engineering and you take a confire and then you just reverse dial, if you know what I mean, like your dials. So then on one turn you're confiring adding a die, and then the next turn you would be re-rolling a die to trigger gunnery teams, and then on one turn you're passing shields with projection experts, and then the next turn you are regenerating shields and passing them. So that's how I would have it stacked. But yeah, I would spend a little more points and get the dual turbo laser card out of there and replace it with something else. Next ship is an assault frigate Mark IIB, and Ken actually told me his idea on this was to use Wedge Antilles, because I don't think either of us have really used it, or if we have, it hasn't really been effective. Before the end of the squadron phase, you may spend a squadron token to choose up to 3 friendly, non-unique squadrons without strategic at distance 1 to 5. Those squadrons gain cloak until the end of the round. So that's pretty cool, because then you can reposition them. And when we get to Ken's fighters, they're all Z95s. And what he was saying is he could then scoot them in to get like an attack or leave them where they were, and then reposition them so they don't just immediately die the next turn. It has gunnery teams too. So there's like a lot of red range that can do out the sides of a ship, and then boosted comms so he can command squadrons. Next ship. It is a GR-75 medium transport with CommsNet and boosted comms. So between these two ships, he can command 5, I think, out of his 6 squadrons. And then, because he probably will have a Garm token, you can command all of your squadrons then. And you can do it at long range. So, yeah, so both of us designed our fleets like specifically around our commanders, which I think you can see. And that's what I think actually made it an interesting combo, is because we both aimed to design them specifically around our commanders, and both our commanders are trash, and both these fleets are trash, but they kind of only work with these commanders, which is funny. For Z95s, Ken has Lieutenant Blount and then 5 Headhunters, and he just wanted to use Z95s, and sadly, I didn't have a good fighter matchup for them, so they got put against non-fighters for this season, so sorry. That's it for that. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to jump back to chat, and then we'll dive more into the match itself. Okay, MommyBlackPearl is here. Welcome to the chat and to the stream. They ask, I got a SSD and Starhawk, are they good? Yes. Starhawk is very powerful, specifically when they have Agate and the titles on it, because then it's like so many defense tokens and it's super tanky. At the beginning of the year, we saw a lot of meta competitively around what's referred to as the Farmhawk. And if you want more information on that, you can go to other Backseat Admirals I've done, specifically the post-Gen Con episode, because I used a Farmhawk to win Gen Con this year. And I talk a lot about how to set it up and how I played my matches. And then it also has, if you want to see me talk more about matches I played with it, you can see me talk about it. I think it's like the Chicago Open is what the title of that is. Dublik says Starhawk is considered very competitive ship and is in every Armada tournament. The SSD does not do well in tournaments, but I do love flying mine. I would agree with that to a point. We're seeing more SSDs come back, and that's because of the paradigm shift in the competitive meta from like Onager / Star Destroyer lists to very much so Rebel MSU list, and the SSD has the potential to kill 2 small ships a turn because it's just crazy powerful if you can line it up right, and MSU has trouble killing it. So if you don't have a specific plan for killing it, you can't kill it and it's going to table you. So it's like a hard stop in tournaments. So if you can't kill it, it wins. And so you see that, and then people that come prepared to kill it just kill it. So it levels out to like midfield a lot of times in tournaments. But if you run against I've seen it happen, like someone brings it and no one's prepared for it, and it's like 10-1, 10-1, 10-1, and they win the tournament. It's kind of crazy. Okay, Ken has joined the chat. I have a Rebel Home 1, Starhawk, Nebula B, and 2 Corellian Corvettes. Yep, that's a good start. I would recommend to that list adding... you don't list fighter packs, but I always recommend fighter packs for every faction. Ken says, a Ken build on the Neb B. I love it. It serves its purpose and kept the MC-80 alive. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. And, like, I kept that stupid MC-80 on, like, 1 health for, like, 4 turns. Super annoying. And then he also, yeah, LTT is better. Hands down. DTT is not good. Okay, so let's jump to objectives. I believe Ken had bid, so he chose... Let me actually double check that. It's been a while since I played. I don't remember what the point totals of our fleets were. Yeah, Ken had bid, and he chose to go first, leaving us with these wonderful objectives. So my fleet's objectives are Most Wanted, Contested Outpost, and Solar Corona. These are kind of my classic ones, and there's a reason for it. So honestly, I could have thrown in their advanced gunnery because my ISD doesn't have advanced gunnery, and then that would be pretty good. But I decided against it because then that gives the other player a lot of options in giving one of their ships an advanced gunnery. While most wanted means I can choose your big ship and get an extra dice every single time one of my ships attack it, and then I choose my Gazanti that's useless in the back, just passing tokens. And you can try to kill that if you want, so good luck. If you were to do it, then the Architens, if you can line up a double arc, so it's like one red out the front, and then you can add in a red. And then the side is 4 reds, and you don't even need a confire. And then the ISD is adding another dice. Like, the amount of dice over the course of the game against a specific target to kill it is really good. Contested Outpost allows me to sit my ISD on the outpost and just sit there and gain points. And then the Architens actually can do this cool, like, they sweep around the side of the contested outpost and just shoot, and then you're having to come toward the outpost. So have fun with that. And then Solar Corona, I don't have fighters, so pretty much I lose any deployment, and this allows me to make the other player deploy, and then I can just flank on one side, shooting out the Architens like they were made to, and you get rid of accuracies. And that really benefited me in this game because Ken had to discard a lot of accuracies, which kept a lot of my ships alive. So obviously he chose Solar Corona because it's the worst, or sorry, it's the best case out of my objectives. So that's the direction that it gets pushed. So let's check out the game. Didn't really think about this. So my new setup, my mic used to be on this side coming in this way with its bracket, and now it's on this side coming in, and my screen's like half covered with it. So I'm going to be doing a lot of weird head movements. So Ken deployed his fleet here, and like I was saying, like, Solar Corona gives me the advantage of deployment because I get to set up my ships after you do, and Ken would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deployments against my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deployments. So I would have all my stuff down, and then that MC 80 and Assault Frigate would go down afterwards, which would mean I would be very much so losing stuff at the deployment. So I decided to set up like this. I have the Architens here. My plan is to like circle around like this. Oddly enough, they don't do well against specifically Ken's fleet here because this is also a broadside fleet, and his broadsiders are way better than my broadsiders in health and in dice output, so these are very vulnerable. And then my ISD can just like come crashing in here because obviously if he wants to broadside me, he has to come this direction. So I figured I would swing the ISD across the middle of the table, try to cut him off, and then the Raider can just slow roll right here because his ships will eventually have to end up in this middle section of the table. So the Raider can like stay at range, hit him, and then try to run. And then the Gazanti in the back, because the Gazanti just does Gazanti things. So you don't see the cursor. Let me move it onto the screen that you guys can see it instead of the screen I can. Can you guys see it now? Let's redo this. So the Architen's plan was to come around like this and then move like through his deployment zone. And then because I think major combat's going to take place around this station here, the ISD was going to come here and then cut across the table, cutting Ken off because he is broadsiders. So his broadsiders, where my fleet is, mean that he has to follow basically from where his pickle is to where my ISD is, or where his pickle is to the empty part of the table here. So those are really his two main options, being a broadsider. So he has to go there, and then the Raider can just hang out in this area slow to control this zone. Now we're caught up. Let's go into the first turn. You can see that's kind of what's happening. Ken's going to turn his ships to broadside me as we go by. Z95s don't really matter. This Nebula, because Ken had to deploy first, is kind of out of the combat, and that's kind of what I wanted, because all those extra red dice from a ship I don't necessarily want to attack when I want to try to kill his 2 bigger ships. It's just annoying. My Raider slows down, and my plan is, again, to wait for the opportunity to try to strip as many shields as possible. If we zoom in here, you can see this very, very important navigate. I will talk about that later. And then my ISD is set that I can just crank it across and try to cut them off. Next turn, we are all right here. I wish my ISD, I wish it could turn more, but I couldn't, because I would have rammed my ship. This is coming from not being super experienced yet with where my Archer 10 would end up. So if we go back, these ships end up here. I thought they were going to be farther out, but they weren't. So I wasn't able to actually crank my ISD in as much as I wanted. So if you just imagine one more click that way is actually where I wanted the ISD. But it didn't work out that way. And I just focused all my fire onto the assault frigate, because I know I could pop that and then hopefully swing around and finish off the MC-80. And again, the Raiders right here waiting patiently for Ken to move into it. And then we get to the next turn, and Ken, this is actually a really good maneuver. And this is something that you can do with the MC-80 when you have engine techs and things like that. So Ken uses a navigate to add a click to the end, so we can go straight and then double click it on the end, which throws the pickle way out there. If you look at where it is to over the course of these turns, it gets out of range very easily. And that's one of its best traits. And you're able to just spin around stuff. So that maneuver got him pretty much out of range. So here we go. Now let's zoom in for a second. What token is this? This is a concentrate fire token. And the reason why I did that, I passed the concentrate fire from my Gazanti to this Raider, because on the next turn I'm going to be, or on that turn I was going to try to shoot it and then make sure I get that ion dice, but I ended up not using it because my initial roll had crits in it to get the heavy ion, so I didn't use it. And 100%, if I had it, this game would have been over. Because with that token, I would have been able to jump up to speed 2 and ram this MC-80 and kill it. And if we go to the next one, my Raider was here and then Ken's ship was here. All I needed was a spit and I would have rammed it. But I couldn't ram it at the speed 1, even with the double crank. It landed directly next to it. I thought I was going to ram it, but I didn't. If I could jump up to speed 2, it would have rammed it, killing it exactly, because right now it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage. So normally I would never switch out to a Confire token. And most of the time I don't use them. I forget about them. And in my strategy, I try to intentionally not use them, because I think Navigate's more powerful of a token. But new season, new John, new strategies, trying to learn how to use ships I don't usually use. And I'm maybe I need it so I can Confire and do a reroll, because I don't really have any rerolls with it to make sure the heavy ion cannon went off. And now I'm cool. Should have just stuck with what I normally did and hit it with the nav to be able to adjust to where I wanted to go. Trying to think of what else. Ken's fighters are all engaged here, and on the next turn I ended up killing a bunch of them because my ships really don't have anything else to shoot at after Ken flings his ship over here. So all these ships are black flak, and 3 health squadrons hate black flak because they're probably going to die. The flak guns turning into black dice actually really helps the ISD in this case. Because I don't have any fighters. Like, if I had fighters, I don't necessarily think I wanted flak guns, because the ISD is better to flak longer range with blue dice a lot of times, like the ISD2, into your fighter ball. Because if you just picture it, like, you have your if you had your ship, and then you have your fighter screen, and then you have the enemies, they're not going to jump between your fighters and your ship. That's dumb. So the blue dice is more beneficial to shoot farther. But when you don't have fighters, they're going to move into you, and then black dice are just better. So that's what I'm trying to say. Then at this turn, like, these ships, my ships are just going to fly straight. And if you see where the ISD ended up, it's too far down the table. I really wanted it to go across more the middle, and that's what I was saying. Like, I needed like one more click in to go where I actually wanted to go with it. And then, of course, my War Gazanti almost takes it out, but the very Ken Nebi was able to pass shields to it and keep it just alive. And that's pretty much how the game ends, is nothing can kill each other. Fly off into the kingdom. And let's check out the score. So I killed the assault frigate, murdered the GR-75, and ended up killing 3 Z-95s. Ken took out my raider. So he scored 66 points. I scored 132, MOV of 66, and it ended up being a 7-4. So the game was very, very close, even though I was like 1 health away from killing. Let's see. Let's actually go through the damage. I think that was turn 4. Ken had 1 health. Turn 5, Ken had 1 health. Turn 6, Ken had 1 health. So there's a lot of turns that I just left him like barely there, and then just kept stripping shields, taking out the shields, and almost got him. Almost got him there. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here, and if you guys have any thoughts or comments or ideas, hit them up in the chat, and I'll go ahead and answer them. Assault frigates seem to get picked on and don't give as much as they get. I have a tough time successfully working them into a fleet. I used to actually have a lot of trouble with them too. You guys will see specifically in this coming season, because we've already played a couple games, I feel like I've used them pretty well recently. And then also spoilers for Madness. There's a lot of assault frigates in Madness, mainly because of the 300 point limit. So it's a smaller point limit, so it becomes almost like a large ship in that format. I think they have their place. The problem is, it's the same problem that I always talk about with when people make Ag-8 ships. Like, you don't ever want to attack them and then have other ships in their fleet, because the other ships in the fleet are just way juicier of a target. And like, if you look at Ken's fleet, the weakest ship to pick on easily is the assault frigate, compared to, like, the Nebula is not enough points to go after to try to get a win. But the assault frigate's a decent amount of points just because it's a medium base, and compared that to the MC-80, like, it's way easier to kill. So if you look at the fleet specifically built like this, you're going to kill the assault frigate because it's worth the most points for the amount of effort that it takes. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that ship's a bad ship. It just means, like, the point to effort ratio for this fleet, it's worth a lot of points. While if you build it with it being like the large ship and then everything else around it being smaller, a player can look at that, or just Ag-8 on it. A player can look at it and be like, the other ships would be a lot easier to kill. So you just have to kind of leverage that to your advantage of how much, like, I'm obviously going to talk about this specifically when a match comes up. Like, is it worth shooting at it and it can, like, barely survive, and then all your other, like, little bees can swarm around and kill that ship? Or is it worth trying to focus down the little ships and then just let it go crazy, because it's still got 3 red dice out the side, and when you get closer to it, it's also a blue dice, so it's not like it's weak. So it's like a balancing point, and like specifically with Ken's fleet in here, it's the easiest ship to kill for a good points trade-off. Hopefully that makes sense. With nav, ions wouldn't get off. Yeah, honestly, that was kind of my thought. But like each time, there's other games that I use ions, and I just, with Confire and rerolls, I never get a single crit. But like this game, I actually got it off just fine. So hopefully, like, it's hard to say. Like, if I didn't get the concentrate fire, 100% I wouldn't have got ion off. So that's how it works. But strategically, I don't think if I were to play the game again, I would change my strategy of using nav as a more powerful command. That's mainly what I'm saying. For your New Year, New John mindset, it would have helped if you just stopped leaving things on 1 health. I know, right? Like, that's my decision to have a new me, new John, and Ken's ships decided not to cooperate with that, and it's really, really annoying. It should learn that new me, new John means that it should die when it gets to 1 health, instead of being able to escape across the edge of the table and not fly off the table. It's super frustrating. Ken, taking the challenge. I'm going to build an assault frigate fleet now. Cross-faction victory 2 and assault frigate fleet. Yeah, that would be pretty good, because then you have like front gunships and side ships. That would be a decent fleet. Almost, but no structural cards. I know. I just needed Ken to draw structural. I don't know how many games we've ended that Ken draws a structural on the last damage, if he needs the extra damage or not. But I was really hoping that my Gazanti could add in enough crits at the end there to draw out that structural that, you know, is just waiting to get out in Ken's deck. Trying to think where this game comes in. I'll talk about that in the next game, actually. Structural damages. So that's something to look forward to. So our next season is going to be coming out 2 Fridays from now. This Friday, we actually have something very special coming out. This was a long, long time ago, and I've been talking about that we've had this in our video log for a while. Because we didn't release anything over like Christmas break, I actually got ahead of editing for like a couple weeks, and I was able to find all the files for a BattleTech video that I recorded almost 2 years ago now. It was me against one of my good friends that I've talked about on the channel before, Alan, and we played Alpha Strike. And it was I was editing this, and I'm like, man, we've come a long way. It was at my old house before we moved to this one. It was before we had an updated dice tray, and like it looks old compared to what we do now. And we have that coming out this week. I was able to edit it together, so it's a really good Alpha Strike game if you guys like Alpha Strike. So check that out this Friday, and then the next Friday will be another Armada episode. What is the odds of pulling a structural? Don't know card counts. I believe there are 6 structurals, but let me find out. 1, 2, 3, 3. I'm turning into Sesame Street. 4. 5. 6. 7. So that means there's 8. Yep, 8 structural damage cards in an Armada deck. So with that 8, there's only 52 cards, so your chances of drawing a structural are actually pretty high compared to everything else. I think it's the most common damage card. So you have like a 15-ish% chance of drawing that card. For Ken, it does seem like 50%. That is very true. And then Ken just literally lists everything in the chat that I just said. So yeah, in about 1 in 6 cards, you should be able to get a structural damage. And then I think there's only 2 projector missile lines. I should really just write down a list of actually what the cards are. I'm sure someone has somewhere, but I've never actually spent the time like to actually look at it. I know back in the day with Riken and other things like that, it was really important, or Dodana, like hunt decks, like to, like your ship, some people are like, oh, my ship blows up, and then they put the ship out. No, it's really important to deal out all those cards, because you want to feed out your card deck, so hopefully you get rid of really bad ones through it. Brenton's in the chat and he asks, a bit new to Armada, but are some upgrade cards one use only like Veteran Gunners, or am I missing something to reset them? So at the end of each round, there's a period of time. I'm not gonna, don't quote me on the exact wording, but there is a time period that cards reset, and I believe it's the status phase is the term. And some cards require you to spend, let me pull this up. That one, and actually I can do it right here. Let me flip over to this. Okay, so let's look at these cards here. So Commander Vanto says here, after you resolve the first command during your activation, you may exhaust this card, which means turn it sideways, tap it. For those that play Magic more often, that's more of what it's known as. But you can't use tap because that's trademarked. Exhaust this card to gain 1 command token of any type. So this symbol here, this is one of the reasons why the upgrade pack went into existence, because they redesigned specifically what each icon in each exhaust type card looked like, so then it was more clear what to do with it. Because it has this double circle-y exhaust symbol, that means during the status phase, this card will automatically reset. This card down here, Electronic Countermeasures, has a arrow, and then it has this bar, red bar down here, that has a cost. And if you read it, while defending, you may exhaust this card to spend 1 defense token that your opponent targeted with an accuracy result. So you do that, you kick it over to the side. And to refresh that, because it has just an exhaust or a non-repeatable exhaust or something like that, I don't remember the exact phrasing, you have to spend a token in the status phase from your ship with this card on it, 1 engineering token specifically for Electronic Countermeasures, to then ready it. And then it can be used again. One-time use cards. I don't know if we have actually any one-time use cards in this fleet. Let me look through it real fast. And as you can see here, this is the Turbolaser reroute circuit. Also has the reusable exhaust. So it exhausts when you use it, and then at the status phase, it comes back. Same thing with heavy ion emplacement. So here it is. So if it's a one-time use card, this is what it looks like with the disposable capacitors. When you activate, you may discard this card. If you do, the blue dice and then it gets an effect. So discard cards, when you use them, you say you're using them, and then you flip them over upside down next to your ship, meaning that you cannot use it anymore in that game. So those are kind of like the three, or we'll call it, there's 4 different types of upgrades. You have upgrades that have an effect, and when you use them, they work and they don't exhaust Iden Versio. In Expert Shield Techs, they might have a cost built into them, but it might not be exhaust. And then you have cards that exhaust and come back, which are like the Turbo Laser Reroute Circuits. You have cards that exhaust and they have a refresh cost, like Electronic Countermeasures. And then you have cards like Disposable Capacitors that their cost is to discard them and you don't get them back. So cards like Disposable Capacitors are a once per game effect. And cards like what you just listed, like Veteran Gunners, are actually a reusable exhaust card. And they can be used then once per turn. And then they refresh during the status phase. Something to take into consideration when thinking about cards and their cost is how often or how likely are you to use it. So, for example, heavy ion emplacements. It's worth 9 points. It has a really big effect, but how many turns is this raider probably going to actually be using this card? And when you look at it, I might get 2 shots off with the disposable. Like, I'm at long range, use disposable. I get heavy ions off. That's turn 1. I move into medium/close range and somehow survive. I get 2 uses. At that point, it's probably going to explode because it's a raider. So I'm going to get 2 uses out of it. So is this card okay for that? Because there's other ion cards that I could put on that might help my survivability or might do a different effect. But this card I'm probably going to get 2 uses out of, and I'm fine with that because the card's powerful enough at its cost that getting 2 uses out of it's fine. If we move to Electronic Countermeasures, Electronic Countermeasures is a get out of jail free card because you can basically use your brace when the opponent targets it anyway. And that's really, really good. It's a really powerful effect. It costs 7 points. It costs, though, a token to refresh. Before you could use it every round, before 1.5, this card was a card that you could auto-refresh, and it was very, very powerful because why wouldn't you use it every single round to use your brace when your opponent targets it? Like, even like on turns that you're like, I don't necessarily need it, you just use it because. Requiring an engineering token is a very big cost for the Imperial fleet because to be able to do it successfully, I put on their Vanto, and Vanto costs 7 points to get a token, or I need a Gazanti, which is 24 points with CommsNet to pass me a token to be able to refresh it, because I don't know necessarily when I'm going to be using the engineering token. So it has a big cost, and in my mind, I'm putting this on there knowing that I'm probably only going to use it once, and it's a get out of jail free card. And that's what I was talking about if you were here during the beginning of the video. At the beginning of the video, I was talking about how I would switch it around because I've gotten very used to running things without using ECM, and that's because of 1.5 changes in the cost of it. You are able to explore other cards. So hopefully that whole explanation of how cards work helps you, and I'm going to jump back to chat. If you exhaust a card, it's readied back up at the end of the status phase at the end of the round. Further question, but Veteran Gunners, for example, doesn't have a symbol, and that's why I'm confused, and you don't discard it. Give me 1 second. The old versions of the cards do have it. I have them here. So that's the wrong book. I'll be right back. This is actually one of the nice things about being in the basement. I can just run and grab cards and bring them to. Okay, so also you guys can see then how I organize my card. This is my green binder. It is my upgrade binder. So I have all my upgrade cards that aren't faction specific in this binder, and I have them sorted by type, and then by cost, and then alphabetically by cost, and each of these has 2 cards in it. So I have like a complete binder of like 6 of everything. I find 6 of everything works well for me because of doing the channel. So if I hold this card up, this is the new card. It is super glary, but as you can see, it has a refresh card from the updated card pack. In the updated card pack that came out around the Clone Wars expansions, they switched over to this, and the Clone Wars rulebook talks about all of that. And then this is how I used to store them. These are my, oh my gosh, I pulled out too many fleets, like with Madness, and I still have all of my old upgrade cards in this, and I did the same basic thing. I would just super stack, like pack them with these small cards. I really like the small cards. But if we zoom in, this is Veteran Gunners, and the phrasing's the same, so while attacking you may exhaust this card. Come on, focus. It's not going to focus. But while you're attacking, you may exhaust this card and reroll all your dice. So you still do exactly what it says, which is kick it to the side, exhaust it. They just went in more detail, and it actually cleaned up the way the game works with the new upgraded cards, is how I feel. Yep. Binder time. I do miss smaller, I'm going to guess smaller format, but bigger ones are easier to read without hunching over the table. That is true. Also, something that I really like about the newer cards is, I'll be right back again. Is like, this is a fleet with the newer cards. I can pick it up, I can put it in a bag, and I'm not afraid about losing a card. They're all the same size. While this pile of mess is the older cards, and with them being different sizes, and the way I like lay out fleets is I like having, like if you look at this, this is a Bomber Command, Expanded Hangar, Bright Hope Transport. Man, the glare is bad. There you go. And you're looking at small. My bad. I'm sorry, guys. Terrible streamer. 0 out of 5. Would not recommend. So, like, I like having all the cards that go with the ship, like, stacked on the ship. So when I lay it out, it all just, I can just deal it all out from the top. And with the mini cards and the tarot cards and then, like, the fighter cards, like, it's all different sizes mixed together. So then if you're lifting the cards up, they can fall out. They can fall out of order. When you got them like this is just so much smoother for just moving a fleet in like a plastic bag to a game or something like that. Or just having it set out so I can just deal it out easily. That part I really like. So I like the larger damage deck for recording, because it's easier to see, and if like Ken and I want to flash it into the dice cam or throw it up on the table, it's easier for reading and things like that. But if I were to, every time I go to a tournament, I have my original small card damage deck. Technically, it's not up to date with all the rule changes on it, but we all know what damage cards pretty much do. So I use that though because it's smaller and then it doesn't get cluttered as much on the table. So that's my ships. I should probably just do an entire episode eventually and just do a here's how I have everything organized now that I'm all in the basement, because I have a lot of organization. I have a lot of ships and a lot of things that People ask me all the time, like, how I have it organized, and it's just hard to explain in a video because not interacting with someone live, someone could ask you a question about it. So, miss the mini and tarot cards. I do too, but like I just said, there is some nice things about it. Use the tarot cards and pack upgrades inside sleeves. That's kind of funny. Yeah, you could do that. What is nice though about it is I don't have to hunt down any more of those tarot card size sleeves for like sleeve sheets for binders. Those are like, there's only like one place to find them, and they were expensive. Now I can just buy like your standard baseball size cards, and I feel like the small card, they're always loose. That's why I usually pack like 6 of them in a card sleeve so they would stay. If you picked up your binder too fast or in the wrong way, they would just all slide out on the top, which was really, really annoying. Yeah, I should have done it from the beginning of Madness, how it's organized, Ken. I might start when we are further in round so people can see about it. So, spoilers if you guys wanted to. There were 2 fighters, 4 upgrade cards in 1 ship that I needed to borrow for Ken to pull all of the upgrade cards for all 16 fleets of Madness out at the same time. And let's see, what were they? I needed another ace. I needed I believe it was Tycho. And for the Empire, those of you that don't know, this will go into that one other video at some point. But like I have 2 full sets of Imperial fighters. One, I haven't done a lot of painting recently of them, but one of them is designated to be painted as the First Order, and the other one's designated to be painted as just your standard Imperial. So for the most part, I have all the aces for both of those painted up, so those are mainly what I would need to grab. But like theoretically, I could have lists that face each other that have Darth Vader both painted, for example. While the Rebels, I only have 1 set of Rebels painted, so I actually need Ken's painted Rebel aces when we have I have multiple of them that I need out at the same time. There's that, and then I needed PDICs. A lot of times I can just go back into the binder and grab more cards. I own 6. I think I finally got up to 6. I own 6 upgrade card packs. So that's to get all the single cards that they have in there up to my 6 minimum. And those cards aren't used a lot. So I actually have like certain cards sleeved and ready to go past the 6 point because they're used on everything. Like, linked turbo laser towers. Because, everyone staples it to every single ship that has a turbo laser slot. So I have like all 6 card packs of that out, so that's like 12 of them, and I then have like promo cards of the smaller size, and then the smaller size to pull in when I need it. But PDIC only come in, I believe, the Providence pack, so I think I have a total of like 6 of them total, and that's not enough for how much people use them, so I needed to get some from Ken. And then I needed another Providence. Technically, I owned 3 Providences, but I painted one up as the Rebels, and I think that people would kind of frown upon seeing a Providence Rebels in a CIS list, so I just decided to have him pull it. And technically, I don't really need it because the fleets didn't go against each other, so I just like having it all out at the same time. Yeah, your fleet did have 2. And that's why I needed to get extras. Welcome to the stream, Darvis. Yeah, we have a lot of fighters painted. Eventually, I would like to get back to trying to finish my fighters, but like the Imperial, they're cheap, so you have more fighters to paint, and then they're kind of boring because they're just Imperial, while the Rebels have like a splash of color, and I was really glad that when the CIS and GAR came out, I really focused in on making sure that they got painted. Otherwise, they would be like everything else. Like, I've been painting my Rebels and Imperial now for like 6 years, and they're nowhere near being done. So, I've actually gone longer than I thought I was going to. Been having fun talking about different stuff. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. And again, we're going to continue doing this with all of our episodes for the season. So, like I said, this week we're going to have an Alpha Strike game come out on Friday. The following week we're going to have the next Armada match, and then shortly after that, like this, we're going to have the Backseat Admiral episode talking about it. So hopefully you guys enjoy both of those videos. So I don't think we have anything else to announce at this time, so I'm going to call it a night. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here and hanging out with me this morning. Hopefully you guys have a great day. Until next time, big thanks from me and Ken. You've been watching Iron Radio, and this is the Backseat Admiral.